Hello, friends. This is September 20th. This is End Times Analysis. I'm Pastor Jeff. Get a cup of coffee, take a seat, and let us reason together. We are continuing our talk about Ezekiel 38, and we are now at Ezekiel 38:21. This is once again one of those power verses where God is intervening in human affairs. I will read. I will call for a sword against him on my mountain, declares the Lord God. Every man's sword will be against his brother. Every man's sword against his brother. Let's think about this. The enemy forces will become so confused, maybe frightened and disoriented by the great earthquake that they will turn and start fighting each other. There are descriptions of this. This is not the first time this has happened in the Bible. Judges 7:22, 1 Samuel 14:20, Haggai 2:22, and Zechariah 14:13. And it says, I will bring judges. Every sword will be against his brother. What does this mean? It means the allies will turn against each other. Like I said, maybe it's the confusion. Maybe God will put a cloud over their eyes. Maybe we don't actually know. We just know it will happen. All right. Now, but there's something else we can't forget. We cannot forget what God says. I will bring him on my mountains, declares the Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. Gog's army and his nation has come against the Lord. They have basically went in defiance of what God called his. My mountains. That is personal. When I say my car, when I say my house, my hat, that is personal. Gog came down in arrogance to invade God's land. My mountains. When you say this, you have just basically declared this is my personal property. You can't get no more personal than that. Gog and his allies came down. This military juggernaut came down. And now all of the allied nations are turning against each other. Like I said, I believe it's the earthquake, fear, everything's confused. Think about whole mountain ranges being rearranged. Think about all the houses and everything else falling. Think about dust. Think about dirt. Probably some wind is going to be there when the earthquakes happen. Everything falling, it will make some breeze, some wind. We don't know how all of these things happen. Like I said, we just know it is. What is the Gog paradigm in this? He is coming down. He has brought his armies. He is completely assured of victory until it's not. Then, like I said, God moves in with an earthquake. The Gog paradigm, what we're seeing more and more. We saw, like I said, say it's not Vladimir Putin. And I've been saying that over and over. I'm thinking it's someone coming after him. He is getting up there in age. There has always been even back into Tsarist times, there's always been a apprehension when one czar dies, another. We automatically think that the eldest son would come in, but there's been time in Russian history when other people have stepped in. Catherine the Great was not in the. She married a czar, and through maculations of history and things she did, she became the czarina, one of the greatest Russian rulers in history. How she did it, well, I can't get into that because it's a whole different area, but that's how it happens sometimes. There's always been a who's going to take over, especially in the Soviet times. When Lenin died, would it be Trotsky or would it be Stalin? When the party decided it would be Stalin because they thought he was more conservative and he would not get into a endless war because that's what they believed Trotsky wanted. And he kind of talked about that when being leader of the Red Army. He wanted an endless revolution. Well, Stalin wanted an endless revolution, but in Russia. He declared war on his own people. He kept the endless revolution, a revolution from above, where he kept sicking his internal security forces on his own people. Then after Stalin died, would it be Bera? Would it be Khrushchev? Would it be one of the others? I mean, no, Khrushchev won out in the end with Zhukov's help. Then after Khrushchev deposed Zhukov, he was the military hero of World War II. Later on, he got betrayed and removed by Brezhnev and Kosygin. So, and then once Brezhnev, he died in office. Then you got Andropov, which many people thought Chelenko was going to get it because that was Chelenko was Brezhnev's right hand man, and actually one he preferred. Then after Andropov died, you got Chelenko. Then after Chelenko died, which wasn't that long, you got Gorbachev, and then Gorbachev, Perestroika, Glasnost. We got into the Russian Federation, the fall of the Soviet Union. What we're saying here, what is the paradigm with Russia? A lot of things that you would normally think would just be okay. This guy goes, we're going to bring in this guy, becomes a mystery. I think it was Winston Churchill that said Russia is an enigma wrapped in a puzzle, done in a question. I'm thinking I'm getting it right, or somewhere in the near area, but that's what he said. Peter the Great said, "This is Russia. Things happen here that do not happen anyplace else in the world." And we're seeing that now. That is part of the Gog paradigm. The country, the nation, every nation has a certain way of thinking. Now I know America is constantly being renewed, getting different ethnic groups, getting different religious groups coming in. So our way of thinking changes. Sometimes we go very conservative. Sometimes we go very liberal progressive. Sometimes we try to keep a left of center, right of center. We try to keep somewhere in the middle. We have what they call the uniparty, where Democrats and Republicans are trying to work in this one area, what they call neocons, neolibs. What is how a nation thinks? What is their value system? Russia believes it has to be strong. Russia believes it is surrounded by enemies, and it has been proven fact. Everything from the Teutonic Knights, which were a religious order, the Swedes, later on the French, later on the Germans. There was the Russo-Japanese War. They got them from these. They were constantly in a land squabble with China, the Imperial China. Of course, they were conquered by the Mongols, or the Tartars, they call them, for like 300 years. So Russia has always believed must remain strong, or it's going to be attacked. Uh, Also, it has a little separation from a large other part of Europe, being the Orthodox center. Yes, there are some European countries that are Orthodox: Bulgaria and Romania, Greece, of course, and some of the islands in the Mediterranean, Cyprus, Crete, and the Greek Isles. But Russia considered itself the third Rome. There was Western Rome, of course, in Italy. There was Byzantium, which they called the Rome, New Rome, and now there was the New Rome, which was Moscow, and then later on St. Petersburg, when Peter the Great moved the capital there. So what is a mentality? How Gog is going to work by bringing this coalition together. Once again, that's a little bit out of Russia's uh, comfort zone. Yes, they worked with the Allies in World War II, with Winston Churchill in England and the United States, but that was after they were attacked. Remember, Stalin made not really an alliance, but a more or less, you leave me alone, I leave you alone, an anti-aggression pact. They split Poland. They Stalin got a chance to retake the Baltic countries, and like I said, they split Poland, and they were going to pretty much you leave me alone. I'll give you natural resources. This is when Hitler really lost World War II. And I know I'm jumping here, but this is just a little side. When Russia stopped being able to supply gasoline, fuel oil, Hitler's armies were mechanized. The whole blitzkrieg revolved around a combination of tank armies and air power. The infantry would come in later. So without fuel oil, how are you going to win? From that point on, of course, they went as far as they could in Stalingrad. They broke their forces down. If someone went to the Caucasus trying to get Azerbaijan and the oil producing areas, they couldn't get it. Their armies got stopped in Stalingrad, which is the one we hear about all the time. And then from that point on, the war shifted. Russia had learned many things from its enemies, and one of it is Always secure your supply lines. Know what you have. What has got to enter into the mind of Gog to be able to rally the Russian people to do this? How rich, how powerful, how insulted must he get? Because it's very easy to get a nation to do something if they think, one, their whole survival is at stake, or two, they're mad. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto, once again, I'm paraphrasing. I hope I'm saying it right. We have an awakened, a sleeping giant, and we have filled him with a terrible resolve. And the terrible resolve was the atomic bombs attack on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Tokyo was firebombed. So you get into things. What has got to happen to make Gog? Of course, getting an alliance together, military alliance, is somewhat out of Russia's thing. It got into an alliance against Napoleon. It didn't work out. It got into the Holy Alliance after Napoleon. It got into other alliances with Austria. We talked about that. It really saved the Austrian Empire in 1848 when the Hungarians revolted. It got into different agreements with Bismarck and about the concert of Europe, I believe he called it. Alliances never really worked out for Russia until, of course, the alliance against Hitler, and that was because all sides had a person that they could concentrate on. Once Hitler and the Nazis were removed, we went into the Cold War. The World War II ended 1945. Some people say the Cold War started really around 1946, but most people believe the Cold War started with the blockade of Berlin, 47, 48. Let's say 47. Less than 2 years between the end of World War II, we were starting now a new Cold War, war by proxy. Not a hot war technically between any sides or groups, but a configuration of how are we going to put our system is better than your system, and we want the world. We want the world to come to our system, and if we have to use continuous revolution, if we have to help support containment, that is what we'll do. United States was containment. Russia was endless revolution, or supporting people's revolution from the former colonial, from the former colonial governments against the colonizers or against the West. So, what has got to happen in that paradigm to believe that I'm going to go down? I'm going to get my coalition. What's going to have to happen to BRICS? Is Russia going to stay part of BRICS as a trade organization and then have a military power? It may see that because it sees NATO going against it. The president of Iran came to the United Nations yesterday and railed against us. The representative of Israel held up a sign about a woman who got beaten to death because she wore her head covering wrong, and he got detained. Really, basically, he probably got more and more arrested. He got pulled to the side, done. We don't know all the things. I don't know all the facts about that, but let's just say I like to be more conservative if I don't know something, and I'm just kind of. He got detained. I'm not gonna say he got arrested or put out. He got detained. He got basically, hey, come over here, sit down. We're not gonna let you go. We're not gonna allow you to have that freedom of speech that you would think. So, what has got to happen to create an alliance when all the alliances I've ever had has not quite worked out for me? They either turned on me either during the war, or they turned on me right after the war was over. I'm going to get these alliances from groups that I've never had alliances with before. Yes, during the Cold War, Libya was considered a client state. They bought Russian weapons, but Gaddafi considered himself a revolutionary. He had Mao had the little red book. He had the little green book. He was going to build an African empire, a thing of Islamic nationalism. He was going to take up where Nasser was. So yes, he did buy Russian equipment and kind of worked with Russia a little bit more because he was anti-Western. But I wouldn't really even call him a client state. You got Turkey. No, even though the Soviet Union, the early Soviet Union, did supply Ataturk with weapons to fight against the Franco-Turco War, and also to help push the Allies, which were Britain and others, out of Turkey during the Turk and the Greeks out of the Turkish Civil War. But once the war was over, Ataturk took a Western or a neutralist stance, and then kind of had a Western tilt. Then you're going into other areas. Afghanistan was the first country to recognize Soviet Russia. We saw how that worked out later on. Everything that has come around Russia has not really worked out for it. The Eastern Bloc, how quickly in 1989 did they desert the Soviet Union when they realized the Red Army was not going to invade? First thing they did was have internal revolutions, some violent, which was in Romania. A little bit later on, when Yugoslavia collapsed, then you have the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, where Czechoslovakia split. Then, of course, the Hungarian and Poland had the round tables, and the very violent revolution in Romania. Bulgaria had basically a transfer of power. What we're seeing again, I am going to get allies from places I've never gotten. Persia and Russia were rivals, and Russia even invaded a few times. Uh, Gomer, Turkey, they have had problems too. The Ottoman Empire, Put, Libya, was not a client state. Kush, Sudan, they kind of worked with them, kind of worked without them later on. Gobal, which I consider a people of the North, which could be people groups coming in, maybe not nations, but people groups, large people groups that will be coming in. Michel Tubal, the area between the Caspian, the Black Sea, and the Caspians, could be the Chechens. We're seeing Chechens now working with Russia in the Ukraine. Dragistan, all these areas, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, we don't know. Of course, I believe, the Gog part is the stands coming, I call the Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan. Those areas, and then, of course, Prince of Rosh. This Commonwealth of Independent States is going to become much more unified. How does it all happen? Where's China in all this? Where's India in all this? It says there will be people later about people who will protest or who ask what they're doing. What is going to happen? What is going to happen in that mindset that is going to say, I am going to move and I am going to do something that Russia really hadn't done? I said World War II, they were attacked. They went in. When in their wars against Napoleon, they consider themselves attacked. They moved in. Here they are being the aggressor. A lot of people consider what side of the Ukrainian war did NATO start it by continuing an eastern march, and Russia drew a line and Russia stopped it? I don't know. You hear our politicians talking about China setting up a spy station in Cuba, but we keep moving NATO east. How do we look at that? What if when the Russians had the missiles in Cuba? What if Russia had troops in Mexico? What if Russia had troops in Quebec, Canada? What would we do? Now, this is a mentality that you see. Okay, we're going to protect Russia. We're going to try to protect our borders. Now, we have an aggressive mindset. What has got to happen in that thing that is basically a defensive group to go aggressive, to go on the offensive? Russia, like we talked about, its military tactics, with the exception of a few wars against the Ottoman Turks and, of course, against Hitler, has always been defensive. We're going to come in, bring you in, scorched earth, let you come in. You do not have, as of course, the Russian steamroller. We have more men than you have bullets, and then later on we have more territory than you can take. Russia will swallow you. The Russian interior will swallow you. You won't be able to supply your army. Then we'll come back and supply to make it go into an offensive mentality. A great charismatic leader, and like I said, with a very intelligent general, a brilliant general. You'll probably see these things have to happen. Will have to rise up in this thing that the people will just naturally follow. That is the Gog mentality. I am charismatic. I can bring people around me who normally wouldn't be brought around me, because all the nations are Muslim, semi-Muslim. Kush could include Ethiopia. Eritrea is a Muslim country, half and half, but it leans more Muslim. So you're seeing all of these things come about. What has got to happen in this mindset? What has got to happen in yourself to completely change your mind about a thing? To, well, we've always done it this way, to now all of a sudden we're going to do it this way. We're going to change our homeostasis. So, as thank you so much for spending some time with me as we discuss the Gog mindset, discuss Ezekiel 38. If you enjoyed this, and I have, please hit the like button and hit the subscribe. Until next time, my friends, Maranatha.